Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are about to provide is true and accurate?
Yes, I can affirm that.
Go ahead, Mr. Jorde.
Thank you. Please state your name, sir.
I'm Lance Kleckner.
And Mr. Kleckner, do you own property in Crawford County, Iowa that's being targeted by the Summit proposed hazardous pipeline?
My wife and I are buying it on contract, started in 2020.
Okay, very good. So you're in the process, well, you're an owner, but you haven't fully closed on your contract yet, is that right?
Yeah, and my mom, Sharon Kleckner, is the contract seller, so Summit was getting kind of confused with all that. They were contacting my mom a lot now.
All right, very, very good. So in any event, it's in the Kleckner family right now and will be into the future.
Mm-hmm, correct.
All right. And, sir, throughout this process, did you cause to be created and filed some pre-filed written testimony with certain questions and answers along with exhibits?
Yes, a couple months ago, or a little.
All right. And if we were to walk through all of those same questions in the written form, would your answers you gave a few months ago be substantially similar as they would be if we asked you those today?
Yes, overall they are, yeah.
Okay. Can you think of any necessary correction or specific update that is needed to be made at this time?
Well, I filed that hearing exhibit. I think it was in the docket yesterday, so that's some of my update corrections there. So if we could pull that up. It's exhibit 635.
So just give me a moment, sir. We'll get these into evidence first. We would offer exhibit 106 through 113, and then 635.
Are there objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
The board will admit, give the weight due.
And then, Mr. Kleckner, the exhibit 35, that is information that you have to correct some of your testimony and make it more specific as to road crossings and gullies and other information you felt was important.
Yeah, the exhibit 635, yeah. Mm-hmm. A couple of things on there, yeah.
Okay. What else beyond what I just said is important with that information?
The 635 is the gullies just because the aerial photos, you can't really see it. You just see the tree coverage and where the pipeline's going. It shows all the gullies kind of going back and forth in there. I had a couple attachments to my pre-filed testimony, and I was standing down there and took pictures, but you couldn't really see how it really was. So the LiDAR photo that I have, that's, to make it more visible, I guess, for the IUB.
Okay, and with the ultimate intention to show the challenges in the contours and the slopes of your property?
Yeah, especially down where they want to go down the ditch. Summit, they say sometimes they bore under streams and stuff, but they never really told me if they're going to bore under there. So I don't know. I'm just showing that because if it's trenched and stuff, it's pretty steep down there.
All right, very good. And so that's all in evidence now, sir. And so with that, I'm going to turn you over to some other folks that may have questions, okay?
Okay.
Mr. Taylor?
Thank you. Mr. Kleckner, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. Do you see the KMZ map on the screen there?
Yes, I see both the parcels affected.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you own both of those red parcels?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. And in the southeast parcel, it looks like there's an acreage that is not part of that parcel, but there are maybe some structures on there. What is that?
You mean in the west part,
Yeah,
the southwest?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's acreage somebody owns, but it's on top of the hill though. So they're probably, you wouldn't worry if a pipeline burst that would go uphill.
Okay, but somebody does live there.
Yeah, correct. My neighbor does. Yeah.
Okay.
It actually looks like, if you look at this map, it looks, it's relatively old because I have more buildings between my neighbor and between my house. I have buildings between there, so there's a lot of things not updated on here. It seems like an old map.
Okay. So where's your house?
It's you just go to the northwest, all the buildings there.
Oh, okay. In that green area.
Yeah, and it's on top of the hill too, right there.
Okay. During the hearing procedure here, some witnesses have testified that they've worked with landowners in good faith regarding issues that you might have regarding the project on your property. What has been your experience with Summit representatives?
Well, that's why I updated, or I guess I corrected my the south parcel, because I never even really thought about the south parcel too much, because back in 2021, it wasn't even part of it. It became, when they started posting those Exhibit H's, I think in August 2022, that's when I first learned about it. Nobody even told me that it was across the corner there. So at first I never even really thought about it, and they never even talked about that parcel ever to me either. We always just, I guess, concentrated on the parcel where it's going through more and it's going through my trees. So we always talking about the woodland. So we never even ever talked about that south parcel. According to the IUB and the stuff I read on there, I think they actually consider each parcel, when they're thinking about the eminent domain. So I need to talk about it, I guess, more, because it's actually an individual parcel. Mm-hmm. So Exhibit 635, if you could put that on there, if somebody could put that on there.
And maybe we pick that up?
Yeah. I don't know if I can see that when it comes up, but you can tell me when it's up. Okay, and scroll down a little. See, I created that one. That one shows what could be done. In my pre-filed testimony, I said they could go in the southeast pasture and just go across there, but they could actually just go across that road right there because it's wide enough. It's an easement, so they'd actually have to switch parcels. That southeast parcel is actually their property, but would actually just go through the road, and you wouldn't have to actually go through somebody's pasture, my land, or anybody's land, and just go right through the road. And it shows, when I measured it, it was about 70 feet or so. So in reality, they could, I guess they could go through there. They wouldn't even have to probably separate topsoil and stuff like that.
Okay, let me clarify just a minute here. So what you're suggesting as an alternative is for the pipeline to go down the east side of that road?
Yeah, just go right, because they're going to cross the road 200 feet north anyway, so they wouldn't even have to go through my property. Just that little corner is only 200 feet they're going through, so they could just go, because they got the person, southwest, they got that person already signed, so if they need any extra space to work going through that road, they could just go right through there, so they wouldn't even have to mess with that property with me.
So on your property, that southwest property, they have what we call a corner clip. Is that a statement?
Yeah, that's just like crossing, and they never had that in the beginning. It just when I all of a sudden saw Exhibit H on it, and all of a sudden I had another property that was under the pipeline threat.
Did you ever talk to a Summit representative about that corner clip and maybe changing it?
They never talked to me about that parcel evidence, so we just always talked about the woodlands because that was just what was always being talked about. So, I mean, this parcel's never even been talked about.
Okay. So
before the hearing in August, I contacted the land agent and I asked him, what their offers were and stuff, and he finally gave me an offer sheet or something on this southern parcel, and then gave like that sample easement contract stuff with that one.
Well, had you ever talked to a Summit agent about the easement terms before that?
Well, we talked about the other parcel, the north parcel. We talked about that, and it says it basically. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that favors them, but it says you can't put trees or ponds over or buildings over the easement, and this whole property is going to be a tree farm. I'm planting thousands of trees probably about every year, and I'm building ponds every year. So it doesn't make sense because that's all there's going to be on this property eventually.
Is that on the north section or both sections?
Everything's going to be a tree farm. Trees are going to be everywhere. Ponds are going to be everywhere too. Everywhere they can be.
Okay, how long have you been doing this tree planting and making this into a tree farm?
I've been planting trees since the mid '90s. So I wasn't even in high school when I started planting trees. And then ponds, I started doing that in 2020. Once I bought the farm. So and then I'm putting all that money, capital investment in it when I actually am buying the farm. So I started building ponds and stuff. I tried to build a couple of years. So.
Okay. Is any of this property cropland?
Yeah. Go back to the KMZ.
Yeah, can we put the KMZ up again?
Currently, I have a tenant with an alfalfa field in that north property. You see, there's terraces. I guess in the western side. So if you zoom in, you'll see the terraces, and then across the road on the east side is in alfalfa too. Right now, my dad. When they bought the property, they used to have it in corn and soybeans in the 70s and stuff. And then in the 80s, the Conservation Reserve Program came into being. And my dad, he was a soil conservation engineer. So and then what he eventually did was he just put it in CRP. And from there, it went to hay ground. So it'll never be in corn and soybeans during my lifetime. So.
Okay. Is it CRP ground now?
No, it's in alfalfa right now.
Okay.
I have a tenant that he makes the hay on there.
Okay. Some witnesses at this hearing have talked about that the pipeline is safe, that it's going to be regulated. Do you agree with that?
Well, no, not really.
State the objection.
This pre-filed testimony talks about safety risks multiple times all throughout the testimony. In addition, Mr. Taylor's preface of each question with Summit witnesses who've talked about such and such at this hearing is not an entree to do additional direct with this witness. Summit's witnesses testified to that in their pre-filed testimony, which was due before the landowner's pre-filed testimony.
Mr. Taylor.
But I think if there is Summit testimony that's come out of this hearing subsequent to the filing of the pre-filed testimony, that's a fair game to clarify or explain the pre-filed testimony in more detail.
Do you need a comment?
Yes. To the extent he's asking the witness, do you agree or disagree with Summit's witnesses? That easily could have been included in the direct testimony, and in fact, it is.
But I'm sorry, I don't want to be late.
It's okay.
But more testimony has come out from Summit's witnesses in this hearing beyond what was in Summit's pre-filed testimony. That's what I'm getting at.
Mr. Taylor, can you just rephrase your question, please?
Have you had an opportunity to hear or review a Summit witness testimony that's come out at this hearing?
I've seen some of it. When I watched some of it.
With regard to safety issues, does that change any of your the pre-filed testimony or add to it?
Well, something after I did do the
Objection,
pre-filed
Your Honor.
testing,
State the objection.
I'm going to object to the extent that Mr. Taylor with Sierra Club is asking whether or not this witness wants to add to his pre-filed testimony.
Well, that's what this questioning is about, is to clarify and add to the pre-filed testimony based on new information.
No, this testimony is our opportunity to cross-examine adverse witnesses if we choose to. It's not for friendly parties to ask questions to add to the direct testimony.
What?
Go ahead. I just want to acknowledge Mr. Jorde wants to weigh in too.
Okay. Well, am I understanding from what the comments the chair has made previously is that this a testimony that interveners can ask questions that clarifies or relates to the pre-filed testimony based on the new information that has come to light during this hearing. That's what I heard in previous comments from the board.
Mr. Jorde.
Yes, thank you. So we join with Mr. Taylor having a slightly different take. Just because Summit has pre-filed testimony, when they appear here and swear under oath and then testify and add new or additional or expand, totally fine. But when they did that, we have the right, I have the right, Mr. Taylor, any party has the right to question any other witness and basically challenge them. Before you said X, this occurred during the hearing, does that change your opinion, yes or no? Those are fair questions.
Your Honor, if I may, and I apologize for jumping in on Mr. Leonard's witness, but this is a much broader issue, not only on other witnesses, but surely on witnesses to come. What Mr. Jorde and Mr. Taylor are describing is surrebuttal. And this is the difference between surrebuttal and cross. Somebody has to go last. The fact that our witnesses have said things, whether it's in our final reply testimony, whether it's on the stand, doesn't inherently mean that they get one more shot. This is the time to cross their witnesses in their case. What they're describing is not cross-examination. It's an additional affirmative testimony from their witnesses. It essentially is giving them a surrebuttal round that was never contemplated in any scheduling order, would be highly uncommon in this sort of proceeding. And by that theory, if they raise new things, then we get to go, and they get to go, and we get to go, and they get to go. That just can't be how it works.
Do you want to add, Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to say this, but the board has said that you want to hear from these landowners, and in fact, Mr. Kosiski, I think it was, who had late filed testimony, was here, and Summit objected, and the board said that you were going to let him testify because he had come here, and you want to hear what he had to say. If Summit is correct that the only reason for these witnesses to come here is for Summit to cross-examine if they want to, and they don't want to, they really have no questions, they just want to get this hearing over with, then these witnesses would not be heard from by the board.
Mr. Jorde, your light's on. Do you have to add to that?
I better just add one more thing, thank you. Summit's suggestion is that whenever the pre-filed testimony date is, then that's it. Landowners are silenced regardless of if there's new information they couldn't have known or that was secretly hidden or that was never brought up so they didn't even think to themselves to even have a response to. And their suggestion is further ridiculous that if their witnesses testify under oath, and that's what we're examining, they have the sole burden of proof. And so when they testify in support of this application, the opposing witnesses who by design come after, i.e. today, should and must be able to address that if asked. asked about it. I mean, I just am dumbfounded how they think that this process, it's just over at pre-filed testimony and now we're just muzzled. That is not how the rules are intended to work, in my opinion. Thank you for letting me be heard.
Appreciate your opinion on our rules, Mr. Taylor. I know your dislike of pre-filed testimony is well documented. Appreciate that. It's noted. Summit filed their testimony on May 25th, and there was a significant amount of time for landowners to review and file their pre-filed testimony. We let in late testimony for landowners because it's not the landowner's fault when they are represented by their attorney that it was late. And so we're not going to fault a landowner because their counsel didn't get it in on time. That is also not us completely opening up the rules to do whatever we want and continue asking open question after open question. We have been very clear the entire time. Cross is intended for the opposing party, according to our rules, to flesh out pre-filed testimony. We've been very lenient throughout this hearing. It is a large part of the reason why we are well behind where we would be right now. And so I'm going to respectfully ask again that cross be limited to pre-filed testimony and proceed forward.
I have no further questions.
Ms. Colas, I think you're next.
Hello, Mr. Kleckner, Jean Colas. I'm also landowner. And with those new directions, I hope I'm okay. On the KMC map, which is up, you indicated a gully. Can you show me can you describe where that might be? Does it intersect with the proposed pipeline on the northeast parcel?
Yeah, and it'd be on the northwest section of it, and you see canopies of trees that's under there. You can't see it, but the trees cover it.
Were they going to bore through those trees, or?
I hope if they go through there, they bore under it. The chairman the board member Burns, he actually talked with a Summit guy on here about my property and asked about that because it was in my pre-filed testimony, and they say that they don't normally do that, but it's possible that they can bore under it if they had to. But they haven't told me they don't want to bore under it because it costs too much. So I don't know. They say they bore under streams, but that stream's dry right now. So we're in 4 years of drought. So
So you have concern about weakness along that gully there.
Well, you saw in Mississippi where it's like kind of like a ditch down there where it fell apart, and I have concerns how they're going to do it. They haven't made me feel confident about it because they haven't really talked about it. They just the land agents, they just want to get your signature, and they just want to keep it going. So they don't really talk about your concerns too much.
How close is your homestead? Could they please measure it to the proposed pipeline?
I think it might be a couple thousand feet. I'm not so worried about my homestead because it's up on a hill but I'm actually in that woods every day. I'm down there. So I'm kind of worried about if it blows up. What happens about that? How big a hole it creates, how close you are if you get hurt, stuff like that. And also my neighbor to the north, it gets really close to his property because how it works in our county and probably a lot of the counties around here, all the acreages are mostly sold off. So there's little acreages everywhere, and some absentee landowner or some maybe a landowner that farms it or whatever, but they don't live on it. They just they accept the payment and they don't have to worry about their house close to it. So I think the neighbor to the north is only like a little over 100 feet from the pipeline, and they have no say in it.
Can you pull that out so we can view that, please? Oh, wow. That was,
Yeah. You see how close it is to about, it's really close to that neighbor to the north.
did
And
they
they
say,
have no say. Even my neighbor who signed north of me, he talked to them about it, and they said, well, they can have it as close as, I don't remember what, they can have it as close as 50 feet. It's legal, so they can do it. Like, he was worried a little about his neighbor, even though he signed it, he was worried that, can you have it that close? No, apparently you can.
going back to your land on the northern property that's east of the pipeline, you said that you have put in over 2,000 trees over the last several years.
I put in a lot of trees. Where they're having the proposed pipeline, that's mostly all forested already. And the difference between planting trees and having land that's already in woodlands is completely different, because I've been planting trees for decades now, and some of the trees, a couple decades from now, they still have grass growing in them. You don't have all those beautiful woodland plants that are flowering. It's just not an ecosystem until you're decades in the future, until I'm old, basically. So here you got established woodlands right there, and there's probably tens of thousands of plants there, and that's the whole point of my farm, is to have this beautiful wildlife cover. And then they basically, and the funny thing is, well, not funny, but it's kind of weird how it goes. I've been against going through trees. Everybody I've talked to is probably over 10 people from the summit, people, contractors, whatever. I always said, don't have it go through my trees. And this started in August 2021. And I think after the meeting in October, they started contacting me. I said, I don't want it to go through my trees. And only 1/3 of my property is currently in trees. And then once they did the Exhibit H in 2022, they actually changed the line, and it's even more into my trees. So they didn't push it out of my trees, my concern, just because the neighbors, I think, started signing. They favored where the neighbors wanted it, so now it's even more into my trees.
It's probably a beautiful area with all those trees. Does it support a lot of wildlife?
Yeah, there's a lot of wildlife there. And a lot of times people say things like bats and stuff are starting to become endangered and stuff, and there's a lot of bats around. There's a lot of elms, ashes, dying trees like that have the needed roosting areas for it, and they haven't really talked about any of that. I seen what was it? It was Summit Witness was talking to Wally Taylor, and they were actually talking about bat habitat and stuff, and they said if they do find roosting areas, they would have to, I think, they have to clear the area maybe in fall or something when they're not roosting there. And Wally was saying, but you're you're taking out habitat. There's not a lot of habitat, so you're taking out the habitat. So where are these animals going to be if the habitat's all gone? The ethanol industry, since the early 2000s, all around me, groves of trees are getting knocked out. So you can kind of see how the thing's going. And now, because of ethanol, somehow they're going to. It used to be, it's a neighbor's property. They can make the decision to knock out the trees. But now the ethanol industry, because of the ethanol industry, apparently, my trees might get knocked out too. I have no say, apparently.
Well, I have groves of trees on my property, and it's rife with deer, pheasants. Yeah. So is this an area that you use for hunting?
My tenant currently hunts it. Someday in the future, I might even prefer to someday lease it out for good money, because you can actually lease out hunting ground. People have a lot of money these days for entertainment. I can actually lease out my farm for hunting for more than I could get for leasing it out for cow pasture. So there's good money in the industry. I was even thinking about where the line's going. Let's see, on that north section. If you zoom in on that north section in the southwest corner, I was thinking about even having a hunting cabin put there. There's an opening. There's actually a gate there that goes from the terraces down to that pond there, and the wildlife you see tracks always going through there. So it's pretty cool there, because they always like to go to the pond, and then they go, and then they go through an opening right there into the terraces. There's alfalfa there right now, so the the deer love it. I see all these turkeys in there and stuff. So there's a lot of wildlife. I even have quail. A lot of times people say quail numbers aren't very good, but my property is doing pretty good with quail too.
Okay, so this pipeline would prevent you from getting a source of income from hunters or whatever in the future.
Yeah, correct. And even more than money, a lot of times, it's just the quality of life, the enjoyment. The whole purpose of this farm is just the enjoyment of my life. So it's not totally about money, but Summit, I mean, if they're going to destroy my trees and stuff, I want to be compensated for it. And they just throw a number out there. I said, if you're going to go through there, and that's the only way you can go through there, then you see what's there and see what the value is. And they haven't. They just threw a number out, out from thin air, I guess, and said, well, it's a good amount per acre, but there's more than that just per acre. It's like if they went through somebody's backyard and said, well, that's good, or knocked down somebody's house, and they're paying them $50,000 for a quarter acre, and say, well, that's pretty good. But it doesn't work that way. I want to be, if my stuff's damaged, I want to be compensated for it so I can, you'll never be totally compensated because some of these trees, I won't even see them that big, even if I replant them, but I want to be able to replant them if they destroy my land. You know what I mean?
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Okay. With no further questions, Mr. Jorde for redirect.
Now, you're kind of an interesting and unique guy here on the trees, and the habitats and the ponds, and so I take it that from your discussions with Summit, they haven't really respected the fact that that's how you on your own property want to continue and develop and improve your property.
Yeah, they're kind of confused how to deal with me. I guess I assume, because I see people testifying, it's mostly all cropland, and one person I saw, they wanted to put it in the trees. So, trees aren't highly valued in Iowa always. So the Summit people, the interactions I've had was basically, one guy, the last land agent I had, was trying to brainwash me and saying it would be a good food plot in there, but I got already alfalfa field on the east side. That's where the deer are and stuff. So they're kind of confused how to deal with it. And I was at a supervisor meeting, county supervisor meeting. I said, what's your selling point to somebody like me? I mean, didn't someone think this through, that there's not everybody just has cropland and it's going to be good for ethanol. You're going to, get more for your corn. I mean, what's the selling point? Nobody has it. They just say it's good for the ethanol industry. I want to know why it's good for me. I mean, how's it going to help me? So that's why I had that attachment 22 where I said, just go through the crop field, because crop fields for me aren't as important. So I would lose the least amount of trees that way. So it's been confusing because they don't know how to deal with it. Maybe they just assumed there'd be a few people that they would just deal with eminent domain. Like they figured all the cropland people sign, and somebody with these trees, we'll get that person through eminent domain.
So have they told you either, pardon me, in writing or orally that they couldn't go through your cropland if this were to get approved?
Oh, yeah, I emailed in August. He said there was something, like, it's within a certain corridor, so you either have to pick this route or the other route They gave me this current one that you see on the KMZ, and then they had it kind of just wiggle a little, so instead of a few thousand trees, it might knock out a couple thousand trees, but it's even more special trees that I've planted that I could never replace, so... that's my two options they gave me.
Okay.
So,
now, do you find it a bit ironic that allegedly a tangential unproven benefit is somehow reducing carbon dioxide, but yet they want to cut down thousands of your trees that already naturally do the same thing?
Well, it's a weird federal program. I mean, they could just, increase CRP basically and have tons of people planting trees through CRP. And I would say that would be a lot more benefit to our communities and stuff. And, especially the highly erodible land, that you'd plant more of that land in trees. That's what the government should be dealing with, because there's a lot of erosion. The waterways are in a mess because they're basically farming, to the stream banks and stuff, and knocking out all the trees. So.
And you had mentioned the habitats and the different species and wildlife on your property. Has Summit ever provided you any biological surveys or any surveys to alleviate any of those concerns?
No, they never talked to him. When I talked about wildlife, that's when the land agent, he was talking about, you could use this as a food plot, like deer are just basically, they think of wildlife and they think, well, deer. But my enjoyment goes way beyond deer. I mean, I like even the old snags that are on my place where you see all the woodpeckers going up there and stuff. When I talk about wildlife, they just think, oh, deer. And if there's somebody's out hunting, you're just thinking about deer. But they never gave me any survey on that or anything. I don't know if they even did one or not.
And did Summit mention if they could not go through a pond, or if the existence of the ponds you're wanting to put there and have started is a particular challenge to them, or did they act like that's not a big deal to put the pipeline through?
Well, currently there's not a pond where they're going to go through, but they wouldn't want to go through no ponds. And trees they don't want to bore under, because the land agent I talked to, he was saying, because I said, well, you can bore under it, because in the Dakota Access Pipeline, there was one of the guys who had trees. Well, they bored right under his property because he had bats and stuff. And they said they'd still have to clear an area of trees so they can, fly over it, I guess. That's what they said about boring. But they never talked about boring because it's so expensive.
All right, well, but for a company that's going to get potentially billions of dollars of taxpayer-funded subsidies, do you think it's your problem that they'd like to return another $1 million or $2 million to their investors?
I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about my quality of life on this place. I just bought it in 2020, and since 2020, there's been a fire. Tons of neighbors have accidentally sprayed my trees. Even the road crews have sprayed my trees since I bought the place in 2020. So, and now in 2021, I get a thing, and I have a company that wants to purposely damage my trees. It's a little different if it's an accident, but man, then they're saying, I want to just go right through your trees. I said, well, I mean, I got plenty of property that don't have trees, but they don't want to wiggle around it. They want their straight line there. So,
all right, sir. I appreciate your testimony. I don't have anything further for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kleckner.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Okay, we don't have any more, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And when I have an opportunity, I would just offer the exhibits that correspond with the landowners who were going to testify but have agreed, in the interest of time and everything, to not testify.
You're offering that now?
If I can, it'd just take like 30 seconds. I just want to get them on the record.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so, and these again correspond with the names of the persons on, I think it was my October 2nd filing that Mr. Dublinsky referenced. So exhibits 235 through 243, that's Janet Miller. Exhibit 216, that's the Marths. Exhibit 233, that's Maureen Allen, Allan. Exhibit 441 is RMT Real Estate LLC. Exhibit 311 is the Margaret A. Thomas Revocable Trust. And Exhibit 281 covers both the Moore Family Trust and Drew's Land Company, Inc.
Any objections?
No.
All right, with no objections, the board will admit. Okay, unless there's anything else today.
I just have two questions, I guess, based on your comment there about anything else today. One, if Mr. Jorde is willing to confirm, deny, or otherwise, we've been trying to track, based on Mr. Jorde's updated witness list, with those persons that we have agreed to stipulate in and waive cross and not have them appear. I show somewhere in the vicinity of 25 plus minus a couple that are left, and I'm just curious whether or not that is accurate.
So pretty close. My count is actually 21, but I might be missing someone, and so I guess what I'm looking at is I think it's just probably 2 days. Obviously, we can get through 10 people a day, so I think we're for planning purposes looking at 2 days, and then we're done.
Thank you. That's incredibly helpful.
Well, and I was going to ask if we know yet anything about those 2 days, or if that's sort of a TBD.
We ironing as quickly as we can, and we'll notify via order as absolutely quickly as we can. I suggested tomorrow, and staff's face said that was not going to happen. So diligent and wonderful staff. I'm sorry, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. It was my understanding there might also be several non-represented Exhibit H landowners who are yet to testify. Is that correct or not?
Okay. We don't have any right now, but we'll address it in the order if it's.
Okay.
Appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Can I just add? I think the comments maybe yesterday, or maybe it was the day before. I'm losing track, but was you maybe were looking at the first full week in November. If that's true, I would just respectfully ask for my folks that we look at the 8th, 9th, or 10th. That would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The 7th is Election Day, and I know there's going to be a lot of people wanting to be out and about, and so in an interest to get this done, if you're looking at that week, I would appreciate you looking at considering the 8th, 9th, or 10th of November, or some combination of that.
Appreciate that. Thank you. That's helpful.
And the only thing I would say, I know I have heard mention in the room about additional landowner testimony, and like the board, I was not aware that there were any, but I guess, if there are people who had requested that date that for whatever reason got missed, over the summer, I think that's one thing. I think if there are people who, after the start of the hearing, have requested, I would have some concern that becomes sort of a rolling, issue. We never get this done. That there really do have to be some deadlines, which I think the board had already requested that quite some time ago. So again, if people were missed, I get that, and we should remedy that. But I don't think that people who have made latent requests that should be allowed to extend the length of the hearing.
Okay. Thank you. Noted. Appreciate it. Okay. We don't have anything else. We will get the order out as quickly as we can. While we iron out some details. It's incredibly helpful to have the number and an estimate on that. Appreciate that. Hold on real quick. Okie dokie.
And I would obviously add that if we can do the first week, full or otherwise, of November, that would be appreciated as well. But I wasn't as clear as Mr. Jorde may have heard on what was said yesterday. So.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. We've got a lot of items to schedule around, and so we'll get that out as quickly as we can. Appreciate the patience on that, and we'll see some of you in a month. See some of you Monday. So thank you all. Appreciate it.